My daughter will use mother-in-law's room, so please sleep in the garden from today. I had never imagined being suddenly kicked out of the house just after Ethan had gotten married. Ethan, who had been distant due to a prolonged rebellious phase, unexpectedly appeared with his wife and children at the wake and funeral. However, Cindy and the kids behaved as they pleased, showing a blatant disregard for others, and I remember being utterly speechless. It was too much for them to suddenly barge in and declare that they would live here from today, telling me to sleep in the garden. But thinking about it, maybe it was good timing. I had just been pondering something. Well then, I'll leave, so please feel free. Then Cindy, who probably intended to dump all the housework on me and live comfortably, panicked, which was laughable. Huh? After such outrageous behavior, I wanted to say, don't think you can have it all your way. I am Kelly, turning 75 this year. Though I lead a comfortable life now, I used to work tirelessly every day. Fascinated by the honesty of numbers, which never lie, I aimed to master the world of numbers and pursued a career as a tax accountant. At that time, I was studying to become a tax accountant while working as an ordinary office worker. The days of taking exams were tough, but I passed on my third attempt, which even surprised me. After deciding to change jobs, I met my husband through an acquaintance. My husband and I have been separated for 5 years, and looking back, I think he was quite selfish, and if asked whether I would marry again, I would immediately say no. I remember him saying he liked women who put men first. He was confident that his word was absolute, but he could never force me to quit my job. Because I earned a bit more. At that time, female tax accountants were in demand, and I also felt fulfilled in my work, so I continued to work even after giving birth to 2 sons. In an era when it was rare for women to work in society, my husband allowed me to continue working under one condition. I should never mention that I worked as a tax accountant in front of others. It was probably to protect his pride, and this applied even to our children. He seemed to have kept telling our children that I was just a full-time office worker at a company. Surprisingly, both of my sons believed that for many years. But at some point, I started to worry about my son. Among my 2 sons, the younger, Tim, wasn't so bad in his rebellious phase, but Ethan, the older one, was uncontrollable during his. His rebelliousness intensified, and he began to ridicule my work, its content, and even my very existence. Probably mirroring his father's attitude. What's with this side dish? It's unreasonable to be satisfied with just this. This includes stir-fried meat with vegetables, salad, pickles. I don't think it's a weird menu, but is it not enough? I have some frozen pasta if you want more. Frozen pasta! Ethan grimaced at the mention of frozen food. Are you trying to deceive me with frozen food? Then Ethan glanced at his father and sneered unpleasantly. Mom, you try to take the easy way out even though you're just a part-timer. My husband just silently continued eating his meal. And seeing that, I lost the energy to retort. Is this something a child should say to a parent, even in a rebellious phase? I didn't know how to deal with Ethan anymore and eventually limited my interactions with him to the bare minimum. Then, taking advantage of this, Ethan's rebellious phase worsened. Maybe because we hadn't had a proper conversation for years, Ethan moved to a neighboring state for college right after high school graduation. He left the house as if fleeing and never properly returned home since then. He occasionally came back for certain reasons, but always timed it when I was not around or sneaked in late at night. It seemed that he really didn't want to see me. Ideally, my husband should have intervened as a father, but dealing with the children was seen as my job, and he maintained an indifferent attitude. I began to think that maybe this was the fate of a mother with 2 sons. Tim married a woman he had been dating since college and moved far away, and hardly ever shows his face here. Although Ethan lives nearby, he seemed to avoid me. Our family was disjointed, but a significant change occurred upon my husband's death. When I informed them about the wake and funeral, Tim couldn't attend due to an unavoidable commitment, but Ethan said he would come. I couldn't hide my surprise that Ethan, who had been avoiding me all this time, agreed to attend. Given the severe rebellious phase Ethan had, I couldn't predict how it would go seeing his face after so long. He might still act like he's in his rebellious phase, or perhaps he might have mellowed out. Even if he showed the same openly hostile demeanor as before, I doubted he would go too far with relatives around. With a let-it-be mindset, I awaited the day. Despite the approaching appointed time, Ethan was nowhere to be seen. As I fretted alone, I saw a procession walking up. Led by Ethan, the group stopped right in front of me. Then Ethan looked at me and smirked. "Hey, Mom, it's been a while since we met at the wake. Might as well have a chat, huh?" "What are you talking about?" "Just relax." Then, he was gesturing to the line formed behind him. He declared loudly, "Mom, I'm getting married properly this time. And I'll protect my beloved family." I was taken aback as I hadn't expected such a declaration so soon upon arrival at the wake. Indeed, it was a joyous occasion, but was this the right moment to announce it? Then, stepping forward from the line, a woman stood beside Ethan. "Nice to meet you. I'm Cindy. We plan to get married next week, so we wanted to inform you." At first glance, she seemed like a normal woman. Given Ethan's notoriously bad behavior, it was somewhat surprising. "Oh, nice to meet you." Cindy, the woman introducing herself, smiled nonchalantly, as if not bothered by the wake's setting. Her smile, which seemed to ease people's wariness, and her well-kept, semi-long black hair made a striking impression. I felt like being swallowed by her pace, but decided to boldly ask Cindy. "Wait a minute. So, you're not married to Ethan yet? And what's this line all about?" With a look that seemed to say, "Is that what you're worried about?" Cindy continued smoothly. "Of course, it's a child we will raise together. I've always dreamed of a large family, so I'm very happy Ethan will become a dad." "No, that's not what I meant." I wasn't interested in hearing about Cindy's family aspirations. Yet, Cindy seemed oblivious to my confusion, continuing to smile warmly. "When did you start living like this? And didn't you used to say you didn't want to get married because you didn't want to lose your freedom or something?" Ethan, who boasted he would never marry, is now a father to a large family. I was so surprised I couldn't find the words. As I pondered what to do, Ethan spoke up. "I've always been all about work, but finally, I've found something I want to protect. Cindy's kids, but to me, they're my own." He said this with a snort of pride. After meeting Ethan, he switched jobs, so now we both work at different places. Despite her constant smile, there was something unsettling about Ethan and Cindy's nonchalant attitude. I was hired as a nursing assistant at a nursing home, and the job was really tough. Ethan was the one who reached out to me during those times. "You know, I'm not the neglectful type, right, Mom?" Ethan said, calling me Mom for the first time in perhaps decades. It's a common way for a child to address their parent, but it gave me a strange chill. Then, pretending not to notice my discomfort, Ethan asked, "We can take some of the appetizers over there, right?" He pointed to the food prepared for the wake, meant to be served later. "Not now. This food is for the mourners at the wake. It's not appropriate for family members to start eating before the wake has even begun." When I gently interjected, Cindy cheerfully addressed the children behind her. "But in the end, we're all going to eat it, right? So, technically, we could eat it now." Well, we'll eat the leftovers later. Go ahead and eat before it starts. This is dinner for today." With that, the children began to grab at the appetizers. 6 kids, an astonishing number. Are these Ethan's children? No, what's more shocking is their terrible manners. One child only ate the sauced parts of the fried chicken, leaving the rest on the tray, while another poked at the food, exclaiming, "This looks gross, ew." The venue for my husband's wake and funeral turned into a chaotic scene, like something out of a nightmare. With the wake yet to start, almost none of the appetizers were left to serve. Only bits of half-eaten food remained. Speechless with shock, I watched as Cindy turned to explain. "These kids are from a previous marriage of mine. Ethan has kindly accepted them as his own. Having lived and met various people, I've never heard of such a large group coming to a wake and ravaging the food. Yet, Ethan and Cindy made no move to stop them, even praising, "Good appetite, eat up." Just thinking about what the wake and funeral would become if left unchecked was terrifying. I devised a plan to send them home early. "Look, the kids have school or something tomorrow, right? It'll be tough if you stay too late, won't it? That's not a problem. Also, is dessert not ready yet? Everything's been so salty, we need something sweet to finish off." Her response left me dizzy. I couldn't back down now. You know, little kids can get stressed out in unfamiliar environments when they're not seen. "If you insist that much, guess we have no choice." I politely explained and managed to send them home for the day. However, Ethan and Cindy's disregard for common sense didn't end there. They showed up at the funeral the next day in casual clothes like sweatshirts and jeans. It's a funeral, there should be some black or formal clothes for the kids. But their senselessness didn't stop there. During the funeral, kids were playing games, reading comics, and watching videos on smartphones. One was even live streaming while the monk was chanting sutras. I couldn't believe the adults were letting them do whatever they wanted without any intervention. I repeatedly tried to correct them, but was met with eye rolls and ignored. I tried to get Ethan and Cindy to leave at the right moment, but it was like talking to a wall. Then Ethan, protecting his children, glared at me. "What's wrong with you, treating my sons and daughters like this? Like this? That behavior is unacceptable at both the wake and the funeral. Anyone would scold them, not just me." Cindy, who had been watching our exchange, finally spoke up. "Well, they're just kids. Please be more lenient. It'll be something to laugh about later." She chuckled softly, covering her mouth with her hand. I was filled with disbelief. They're just kids? Something to laugh about later? Those are things someone else might say to console, not something parents should be saying about their own children's behavior. I prioritize non-punitive parenting. So, it really bothers me to see my mother-in-law scolding the children without restraint. Please stop. Cindy's eyes were not smiling. As the chief mourner at my husband's funeral, I wanted to send him off properly. Having his funeral ruined and then facing this treatment was too much. But given what had happened the day before, I realized that saying anything to Ethan, Cindy, or their rampaging kids would be futile. I had no deep relationship with Ethan's family and their children. I didn't even know Ethan was married with kids until it was mentioned. I'm fed up with these people. I decided minimal contact would suffice. One day, about 6 months after that funeral, my doorbell rang. Thinking it might be a delivery, I opened the door to an unbelievable scene. Ethan, Cindy, the children who wreaked havoc at the wake and funeral, and an unfamiliar woman who looked much younger than me, were standing there. All 9 of them. Lined up in front of my house. "Hi Mom, we're home," Ethan said as they all trooped in. Rolling their carry-on bags through my house. Trailing mud on the freshly cleaned hallway. "Wait! What's going on? And the mud on the carry-on bags?" I tried to stop them, but nobody paused. Turning the hallway black with mud. The children, as loud as ever, critiqued everything from the cheap-looking dresser to the probably old TV. Even the unfamiliar woman at the back started complaining. "It's a bit old, but it'll do." "Well, it's tacky, but it'll keep the rain off." I guess I can put up with it. Unable to stand their brazen behavior and mess any longer, I finally spoke up. "Enough! Ethan, Cindy, and who is this woman?" Cindy, smiling just as she did at the funeral, answered. "Oh. She's my mom. She's having a hard time, you see." The woman called Mom carelessly introduced herself as Sarah, while fiddling with her smartphone. "Recently, I went on a shopping spree for new brand bags. I bought so much I couldn't pay, then Cindy suggested we live together, lucky me. They thought it would be easy living here, no need to bother with household chores." They exchanged smiles, which seemed eerie to me. "What are you talking about? And what do you mean by no need to do household chores? Well, that's exactly what it means. You'll take care of the chores, so we don't have to. So, nice to meet you. I couldn't hold back anymore. Who decided this? This is my house. Cindy, trying to calm me down, said. Mom's room will be used by my daughter, so you'll sleep in the garden starting tonight. What? Why should I sleep in the garden? Well, there's no room inside, you know. If you need, I saw tents for sale at the recycling shop. Should I buy one? Cindy was deflecting my anger as if soothing a client in a nursing home. I never said you could live with me in the first place, and this house is. Just as I tried to discuss the house, Ethan turned to me, clearly angered by my reaction. What's the complaint? I'm letting you take care of your adorable grandchildren. And cooking prevents dementia, right? I thought letting you cook for everyone would help keep you sharp, Cindy added. Obviously, I had never asked for this. It was clear Ethan and Cindy had unilaterally decided to move in and dump all the inconvenient chores on me. I shook off Cindy's hand and stood up. She stumbled a bit, but I couldn't be bothered. Ouch. What are you doing, Mom? What am I doing? That's my line. What's the problem? Isn't it the greatest happiness to live every day with your adorable grandkids? I realized talking further was futile. To them, I was just a convenient household helper. Well, I'm leaving, so make yourselves at home. Huh? I packed my belongings into my familiar bag and prepared to leave. Cindy frantically circled around me, which was annoying, but I focused on packing. Where are you going, Mom? To my place, where I will live. I've sold this one, so I can't stay here anymore. Ethan reacted to my words by grabbing my shoulders and shaking me. Ethan shook me so vigorously, as if he was trying to wake me up, that for a moment I felt like I was getting carsick. He pointed to a photo frame in the corner of the room, and then yelled while looking at a picture of my husband. Hey, Mom. What do you mean by sold? This is the house Dad left us, you think it's okay to lose it? Holding the picture of my husband, he melodramatically called out, Dad. He was sentimental, but I felt it was time to tell him the truth. This house was originally bought by me, I said, pointing to the floor, addressing Ethan. Then Ethan looked at me, puzzled, as if he didn't understand what was being said. Huh? What do you mean? Mom bought it? You think a woman can't buy a house, just like your father? Like father, like son. His absurd thinking made me sigh involuntarily. Well, that's fine. If you didn't know, then you didn't know. What do you mean by that? Ethan looked at me, seemingly unable to grasp the situation. You knew I was working outside, didn't you? Ah, you were working as some office clerk, right? Ethan and Cindy seemed utterly perplexed. As if the notion of a woman building her own house was preposterous. Cindy appeared to have decided that I was lying. That's ridiculous. You're saying Mom could afford to buy a house? Impossible. Cindy claps her hands while laughing like a monkey toy. Cindy's habit of clapping her hands while laughing had always been noticeable to me, but seeing her like this, I found it quite vulgar. Nonetheless, I felt the need to explain, ignoring Cindy's behavior, and continued. I had been working as a tax accountant in an accounting firm for years, so I had some money and, thankfully, enough credit to buy my own home smoothly. Huh? Accounting firm? You never mentioned that. Ethan looked bewildered. Back then, the prices for houses around here hadn't skyrocketed yet. I thought to myself, I can do this. Ethan and Cindy still looked unconvinced. But Dad was the breadwinner, working as the head of the household. And I've never heard of Mom being a tax accountant. I always thought you were just an office clerk. It's too late to talk about it now. Dad had strongly requested it. Strongly requested what? He asked me not to talk much about working as a tax accountant or that I bought the house in my name. Maybe it was his pride. Cindy banged on the table forcefully. Lies, why did you keep silent? I had no idea. I had a promise with my husband, and there was no need to mention it. It would upset him whenever I talked about my work, so I hardly ever brought it up. What? That can't be true. Ethan glared at me, but I was unfazed. So what if I had told you? I can imagine what you would think anyway. Then Cindy, as if trying to steer the conversation, asked, "But, Mom, where do you plan to go after leaving this house?" She might seem like a kind woman concerned about her mother-in-law's well-being. She was probably trying to engage me calmly. However, she was someone planning to take over my home, including her own biological mother, intending to make me like a servant. Being calm with such a person is beyond difficult. Where I go is none of your business, isn't it? You plan to live here, so please, feel free. Ethan then spoke to me with a suddenly gentle tone, as if flipping a switch. Well, since we're family, shouldn't we at least know each other's whereabouts? What are you going to do by knowing where I am? Plan to take away my living space again? I noticed Ethan becoming flustered. Mom, aren't you worried about what might happen? I'm not worried. I'm going here. I showed him a flyer. Though it was just a simple flyer, Ethan and Cindy looked at it wide-eyed. What do you mean? This is where I work. I had been contemplating what to do with my oversized house and where to spend my final years. About 2 years ago, I became interested in this facility through a flyer that came in the mail, researched it through friends, recommendations and my network, and had been on a waiting list until a vacancy finally opened up. Yes, they offer great services and plenty of recreational activities, so I wanted to give it a try. I got a call about a cancellation 2 weeks ago and have been preparing to move. The care facility was quite luxurious, with a reputation for excellent services and gourmet meals, making vacancies rare. Ethan and Cindy started to tremble, perhaps upset by my response. What do you mean you have the money for that? You're not thinking of spending it on your dear grandchildren? Ethan pointed towards a room where the children were causing a mess. I glanced over to see the kids misbehaving. The wallpapers were punctured with holes, and they were casually charging their electronic devices. Look at them, charging their devices without a care, like electricity thieves. What? Calling your grandkids thieves, that's really the end of it. Ethan yelled, but I remained unfazed. For the sake of my dear grandchildren? Like at the previous wake and funeral, kids who behave shamefully in public are hardly dear to me. Besides, I've only met them twice and can't suddenly think of them as my grandchildren. What? What do you mean by that? I thought I'd let you take care of the grandkids and cook to prevent dementia. That's right, you should just listen to what the younger generation says, and everything would be resolved. For some reason, even Sarah joined in the counterattack. But I wasn't going to just take it. I will be relinquishing this house, so do as you please. It has nothing to do with me. I said my piece and prepared to leave the house. I ended up transferring my old house to Ethan and his family and moving into the nursing home. Oh, I forgot to say something. What's all the fuss about? If a storm comes, I might let you sleep in the entryway. Well, that's fine. After all, we're offering this out of kindness. Ethan and Cindy exchanged smirks while Sarah and the grandkids acted indifferent. Though I had more to say, it was pointless with Ethan and the others insisting on living there without listening to me. I had lived alone until now, but found joy and motivation in daily life among people my age and the caretakers. One day, Ethan contacted me on my phone. Hey! The house is falling apart, it's unlivable. His tone implied that I had pawned off some defective merchandise on him. That's why I was looking for a buyer, as if it was a second-hand item. With all the renovations going on, you could have done some refurbishing too. What? Renovation? Where's the money for that, after dumping a defective product on us? Dumping defective products? It's come to this because you all wouldn't listen and just took over. Ethan sounded embarrassed on the phone but hung up quickly. Cindy continued working at the same nursing home after I moved in, likely not wanting to resign just because her mother-in-law had checked in. It seems that the pay at this nursing home is quite good, and people rarely leave unless something significant happens. I don't mind as long as she does her job properly. However, since I've been here, I've only heard concerning stories, unlike anything I heard from friends' reviews before. Following up on these stories, it appears Cindy has a poor reputation among both staff and residents. She skillfully avoids difficult tasks with a smile, opting only for the easy ones, which is quite apparent even from a resident's perspective. Her work is sloppy, often redone by others, leading me to wonder why such an incapable person is kept on staff. It turns out she changes her behavior depending on the person, being cold to those she dislikes while buttering up those with money or influence, making her seem like a hard worker at first glance. But can one really get by just on the ability to flatter and navigate social situations? When I applied, I wrote my niece and her husband's names in the relatives section of the form, so no one inside knows about my and Cindy's in-law relationship. Cindy must sense something, treating me like a complete stranger. "Here's your meal, Kelly. Today we have your favorite, pan-fried whitefish." "Thank you, it looks delicious as always." "Certainly, let's continue the translation with attention to detail." Cindy, maintaining her usual demeanor, presented the meal with a smile, not letting on any hint of our familial connection. She consistently performs her duties as a caregiver without any sign that she recognizes me as her mother-in-law, which is quite remarkable. Intrigued by the rumors and stories shared by other residents, I decided to investigate Cindy's hidden side. I followed her during less busy times, such as in the bathroom, the dimly lit dining hall after most had returned to their rooms, and a small room adjacent to the common area. I discovered her routine mistreatment of the residents, including sneaking into rooms of those with difficulty managing personal belongings and stealing items. Appalled, I anonymously reported these incidents to the nursing home management. The management took the report seriously and conducted a thorough investigation, revealing Cindy's misconduct, including boastful posts on social media about her exploits, much of which went unnoticed by the residents themselves. This revelation caused quite a stir within the nursing home community. Ultimately, Cindy was dismissed from her job in a disciplinary action, which likely means she will struggle to find employment in this field or any other for a while. Ethan, affected by the spread of these rumors, appeared to age rapidly due to stress. He had once boasted about his young and capable wife, but those days seemed like a distant memory. After I left the house, Ethan and Cindy, along with their children and Cindy's mother, seemed to live crammed together in the house. I still keep in touch with a friendly neighbor, who tells me that loud arguments are frequent, leading to multiple police visits. One day, while I was relaxing in my room at the nursing home, the rattling of the window glass caught my attention, so I opened it to find Cindy there. Cindy, glaring at me with a terrifying face, bore no resemblance to her former self. Her once well-nourished cheeks were now gaunt, her hair streaked with gray and unkempt, and her skin was far from the polished look she once had surrounded by brand-name luxuries. She accused me, "It's because of you, mother-in-law, that I'm in such a dire situation." "My fault? What do you mean?" I inquired, confused. "Huh? What do I mean? While you sit comfortably, pretending everything's fine, I'm in misery because of you," Cindy said, gripping the window frame and shaking it vigorously, causing a loud rattling noise. "What do you mean, what?" "It's because you've strayed from decency, Cindy." "How is that my concern?" I responded, her eyes wide as she glared back at me. "I'm the only one, right? I'm the one you're treating as an obstacle." "What? Are you saying I'm the reason you were fired?" "But everyone used to listen to me, and I was adored at work." She trailed off, seemingly delusional. "It's truly sad you haven't noticed that everyone was avoiding speaking to you." "Sad? What do you mean by that?" Cindy retorted, her hair flailing as she flew into a rage. I stated coldly, "Leaving that aside, did you really think you could continue working without any consequences after what you did? Yes. Because this place can't function without me. Well, I might overlook it if you retract your snitching and get me back to my original position. You still want to claim you're not at fault? If you feel so strongly, perhaps you should plead your case with the appropriate authorities. I pressed 911 on my smartphone and showed Cindy the call initiation screen. She ran away, probably thinking she would be reported. From her behavior, she probably still thinks she did nothing wrong. I am still leading a fulfilling life in the nursing home. Within the nursing home, I've made good friends, and we visit each other's rooms and have fun playing games. At that time, I had some doubts, but now I think it was good to let go of the house where I had lived for many years. Now, I feel happy living a good life without worrying about my troublesome eldest son and his wife. Ta-da! Surprise! Mom's coming along with us. That's what my excited husband announced as his voice echoed through the entryway. Ignoring my cheerful husband and mother-in-law, I couldn't hide my surprise. And no wonder. Because the trip my husband mentioned Mom would be joining us on was our honeymoon. Confused about what he was saying, my husband's face turned into a pout of dissatisfaction. What's the matter? Aren't you happy? Happy was the last thing I was. He should have known that. Especially since my relationship with my mother-in-law was the worst, something I had complained about bitterly. It seemed she couldn't forgive me for stealing her precious son. Whenever she saw me, she would pile on the sarcasm as much as she could. The annoying part was, she never showed that side of herself in front of my husband. She was thoroughly playing the role of the good mother-in-law. Perhaps because of that, even when I confided in my husband about being mistreated, he hardly believed me. But still, he should have been well aware of my discomfort around his mother. Despite that, he went ahead and planned this. What was he thinking? Wait a minute. It's the day of, isn't it? There's no way we can get plane tickets or a hotel at this point. Of course, I hadn't booked anything for my mother-in-law. It was absurd to think we could get her on board without reservations, especially during peak travel season. Explaining that to him, my husband snorted as if it were obvious. Well then, give me all your tickets. I'll go with Mom. He reached out his hand as if it was the most natural thing in the world, leaving me speechless with disbelief. What on earth was he thinking? This wasn't just any trip. It was our honeymoon. Who in the world goes on their honeymoon with their mother? Well, I wouldn't want to go on any trip with this mother-in-law either. As I stood there with my mouth agape, my mother-in-law wore a triumphant look. She must have been so proud that her son chose her first. Come on, hurry up. I paid for it, so it shouldn't matter, right? He thinks just because he paid for the trip, he can do whatever he wants. That's when it hit me. Speaking of which, about the cost of this trip. My name is Grace. I'm 28 years old and work for my father's company. At the start, there were many who questioned my qualifications due to nepotism, but as I diligently worked and started producing results, I gradually began to hear people appreciating my efforts. Despite this, simply because I am the CEO's daughter, there are still those who speak ill of me behind my back, and sometimes their cruel words do hurt. The one who supported me through these challenges was my husband, Lucas. Lucas is the same age as me, and since we were assigned to the same team, we quickly became close and started confiding in each other. It didn't take long for us to begin dating. Lucas, who was adept at his job and significantly contributed to our achievements, was highly regarded by my father, who was all for our marriage when we announced it. So, you're Lucas, huh? I've heard a lot about you. I'm entrusting my daughter to you. Yes, I'll make sure she's happy. I fondly remember watching their exchange back then. At that time, my father was contemplating handing over the company and had discussed it with the other executives, leading to widespread speculation that Lucas might be the next CEO. The idea of my marriage seemed to present an opportunity for my father to consider a transition of leadership within the company. Having someone from within the family, especially someone as competent as Lucas, take over the business was probably not something my father was entirely against. I've never been one to seek the limelight, so the thought of my skilled husband taking over was nothing short of ideal for me. That's probably what everyone, including my father, was thinking. However, when we had dinner together, he often spoke about the mindset required for running a business, suggesting what might eventually come to pass. Lucas's father had already passed away, and his mother was living alone. Lucas dearly loved his mother, always ready to rush to her aid whenever she needed help, even during our dates. He felt a deep sense of gratitude for being raised single-handedly by her and would apologetically express his desire to repay her, which I would support with a smile. Seeing how much he cared for his mother made me think, what a wonderful man he is. I felt proud to be dating such a person. However, after we got married and started living together, I began to notice things that made me question. I'm going to see my mom for a bit. That sentence had become almost a catchphrase for him. And he was visiting his mother almost every week. Is your mom feeling ill? I would ask out of concern, but it seemed that was not the case. Grace, you don't need to worry. Everyone needs some alone time, right? Initially, he would reassure me with those words and a gentle pat on the head, but even that had stopped recently. One Saturday morning, as Lucas was cheerfully getting ready to leave, I asked him, "Hey, are you going to her place today?" Upon hearing this, his previously cheerful demeanor immediately changed, and he let out a heavy sigh. Why do you have to say it like that? His words made me flinch. I realized too late that my tone might have sounded accusatory. He turned around and glared at me. It can't be helped. She's all alone at home. You understand I'm just checking in on her because you're not comfortable, right? His words made me step back. Yes, I was uneasy around her. It wasn't always like that. After all, she was the mother of the man I loved. I initially thought I should cherish my husband's mother just as much as he does. That was my initial intention. But it turns out, just because you feel a certain way doesn't mean the other person will feel the same towards you. My mother-in-law seemed to view me as a cat burglar who stole her son away. Ever since we met, she's been seizing every opportunity when Lucas isn't around to throw snide remarks my way. It happened for the first time when I went to greet her. Lucas had left to use the bathroom, and as soon as the sound of his footsteps faded, her demeanor changed completely. From her previously pleasant expression, she looked me up and down as if appraising me, her gaze cold and assessing. I don't care if you're some CEO's daughter or whatever, you're nothing special. Before I could even recover from the shock, she continued with her venomous words. To think you'd have the nerve to show your face after stealing Lucas from me. I don't accept you at all. Make no mistake about it. She sneered at me, then loudly slurped her tea in a vulgar manner. Naturally, she hadn't offered any tea to me. Mom? Don't call me Mom. It's creepy. I wondered why someone I was meeting for the first time would harbor such hostility towards me. Despite my attempts to speak up, I was immediately shut down by her. As I stood there confused, I could hear Lucas returning from the bathroom. And just like that, she flipped back to her pleasant facade, offering me tea as if she had just remembered. Oh, dear, I'm so sorry. I haven't even served you tea. She laughed lightly, and Lucas, upon returning, gave a wry smile. What's the matter, Mom? You haven't served tea yet? Such a lovely young lady, Lucas. I can't believe I forgot to serve tea, she said, her face breaking into a kindly smile. I'd be delighted if you felt comfortable enough to call me Mom. I felt a chill run down my spine. Ever since then, she's been consistently nasty to me whenever Lucas isn't around. It's like dealing with Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. Lucas seems oblivious to the malice his mother shows only to me. Whenever I couldn't bear it and tried to talk to him about it, he'd stubbornly insist that his mom could never say such things. If it bothers you that much, you don't have to see her. He looked disappointed, not believing a word I said. I used to plead my case fervently. But eventually, I gave up trying to clear up the misunderstanding, seeing as he always took his mother's side. So, I took Lucas at his word and started avoiding visits to my in-laws. Unless it was absolutely necessary. To Lucas, it must seem like I simply detest his precious mother for no reason. Just make sure to lock up, okay? He said today, too, heading out to see her without looking back at me. My hand stretched out to him, grasping at the air. Lucas's back blurs through my tears. On the days we fight over his mother, Lucas doesn't come home. It feels like he's showing me that his mother is more important to him than his wife, me. If it weren't for issues with his mother, Lucas would be a great husband. When work isn't going well for me, he's quick to notice and offer support, and even though he often works late, he helps with the household chores without complaint. Thinking that at least he says I don't have to see her makes me feel slightly better, I mutter to myself while looking through travel brochures. I shake my head and decide to focus on the plan in front of me. It's the planning for our much-anticipated honeymoon. During this honeymoon, I won't have to think about his mother at all. At least, there won't be any chance of Lucas being called away by her. While considering the increase in Lucas's overtime due to his involvement in a big project, I daydream about where we could go. Maybe we should splurge a bit. As I flip through the pages, the temptation arises, but I immediately hold back. Since I've left all the planning to you, at least let me pay for it from my account. He said, refusing to listen to my protests that we should pay together, and just laughed. If it's just him paying, I shouldn't spend too much. Besides, I don't want to give his mother any more material for her snide remarks by appearing as a spendthrift CEO's daughter. With that thought, I let out a wry smile. Just when I decided to focus, I find myself thinking about his mother again. Ah, stop it. To change my mood, I put aside the brochure and start preparing dinner for Lucas, who will be home soon. And then, the morning of our honeymoon arrives. As I'm busy preparing, the doorbell rings. Coming. Being near the door, I open it without checking the intercom, only to be taken aback. Mom! There stands his mother, in flashy clothes with a large suitcase. Hearing my voice, Lucas peeks out. You're early, Mom. He greets her cheerfully, while she doesn't even glance at me, leaving me alternating looks between them in confusion. Early? What do you mean? Despite it being the day we're supposed to leave for our honeymoon, I'm puzzled by her large luggage. Is she planning to stay at our place while we're away? Confused, Lucas turns to me with a smile very much like his mother's. Tada! Surprise! Mom's coming with us on the honeymoon. What? Stunned, I let out a foolish noise as Lucas claps his hands in excitement. What on earth is he talking about? Wait a minute! What do you mean? Like I said, Mom's joining us on our honeymoon. Seeing my confusion, Lucas narrows his lips and cheerfully hugs his mother's shoulder. If we're going on a trip, I thought it'd be nice for Mom to join us. Watching her son express this happiness, my mother-in-law turns a smug look towards me. No, wait a minute. I press my temples in confusion and ask for clarification. This is our honeymoon, right? Honeymoons are supposed to be for the couple. I could understand inviting important family members, but shouldn't we at least discuss it first? Am I wrong? I can't be wrong, right? Yet, why are they looking at me as if my words are foreign? He made me question whether Lucas understands me at all. To make matters worse, as I struggle, my mother-in-law starts to hum a tune, clearly pleased by my discomfort. Why do we have to argue like this on what should be the joyful day of our honeymoon? And a surprise? What kind of surprise is this on the day of the trip? What's the big deal? I paid for it, so it should be fine, says Lucas, noticing my shock and frowning. No, it's not fine. Was his offer to pay for the trip not out of consideration for me, but to ensure I couldn't complain about his mother coming along? Wait, you can't just spring this on me all of a sudden. It's obviously not possible. I say, my disbelief growing. My sigh of frustration only makes Lucas and his mother more upset. What do you mean, not possible? Oh dear, you don't want to travel with me, she says, putting on a distressed face as if she's the victim, while Lucas adds in with a similarly troubled voice. My headache only intensifies. It's not about wanting or not wanting. Lucas, did you book a flight for your mom? What about the hotel? I inquire, and Lucas looks at me puzzled. Huh? We can just book that now. That's impossible. Do you realize how many months in advance we've made our reservations? I can't help but raise my voice at his lack of planning. Could he really have thought it would all work out, even on the day? Despite intending not to go overboard, the hotel we booked is fairly upscale. Especially now during peak travel season. There's no way flights or hotel rooms are available. I argue, and Lucas, as if it were the most natural thing in the world, extends his hand to me. Then give me all your tickets. What? I'm so taken aback I have to ask him to repeat himself, and Lucas does, more irritably. Just give me your tickets if there's no room for Mom. It's an order from me, who's paying for the trip. Seeing my mother-in-law's triumphant face makes everything go dark before me. What? What does he mean? What am I being told? Since Mom went through all the trouble to prepare, I'll be going on this trip with her. We can go on another trip, just you and me, later, that's fine, right? Lucas's reasoning, prioritizing his mother as naturally as breathing, leaves me unable to comprehend. Or does he think that going on a separate trip with me later will smooth things over? I've said it before, but this is our honeymoon. Ours, mine and Lucas's. And now, he expects me to just hand it over to his mother, who showed up out of the blue with some surprise I know nothing about. Mom went through all the trouble to prepare? I couldn't care less. If he wants to smooth things over, he should be sending his mother home, not telling his wife to give up. Yet, here Lucas is, telling me to give up, and I'm utterly dismayed. Actually, I was going to keep quiet about this, but I press my aching head and let out a heavy sigh. The trip expenses? My dad is covering them. You haven't paid, and you have no right to demand my tickets. When I reveal this, Lucas's expression turns to one of confusion. That makes sense. He thought he had paid, which is why he felt so bold. Why would the CEO do such a thing? Lucas starts to sweat as I give him a cold look. The honeymoon money was a gift from him, telling us to save it for our future. He even said to keep quiet about it, probably to protect Lucas's pride. Why didn't you say anything? Lucas yells, his face turning red with the shock of the revelation. My mother-in-law, too, probably didn't expect my father to be the one paying. She starts to fidget nervously. Watching Lucas rant, I feel my affection for him cooling rapidly. I've had enough of his mother's snide remarks and his prioritizing her over everything. If it's just the two of you going, you'll need to return the money to my dad, and I'll cancel the reservations. Go on your trip with your own money. I shake off Lucas and his mother's frantic attempts to stop me, grab my packed bags, and leave the house. This is no joke. Using my father's money for such a mother-son affair? Over my dead body. Thanks to being tasked with all the preparations due to their busy schedules, I had made all the reservations under my name, so I start making cancellation calls while getting into the taxi I had called. Instead of heading to the planned airport, I give the driver my parents' address, and with confusion, he drives off. Arriving home with my luggage on what was supposed to be my honeymoon, my father is astoundingly surprised. But as I recount the story, his anger flares up like wildfire. What is that? Are they joking? The incessant calls from Lucas only fuel my father's rage. And my own too. Talking to my father solidifies my resolve. Dad, I think I want to get a divorce. After I made my declaration, my dad calmed his anger and gently supported me. Without saying whether it was good or bad, he soothingly rubbed my back, providing warmth. I'm sorry, Dad. I blurted out, tears accompanying my words. I could see Dad's other hand, not around my back, clenched tightly in response. The next day, Lucas came to my parents' house with a box of confectionery, intending to apologize. I wanted to refuse him entry, but my dad stopped me. If we're considering divorce, a discussion is necessary. I want to hear his true intentions directly. Let him in for now. I had thought about consulting a lawyer, but since Dad suggested otherwise, I relented. Upon opening the door, Lucas, noticing my dad, quickly apologized. Seeing Lucas act meekly in front of my dad irritated me. As Lucas continued to show his remorse, Dad prompted me to lead him to the parlor. I deeply apologize for causing such a disturbance. Lucas apologized again. Accustomed to apologies through work, his flawless posture was almost sickening. What is this apology even for? Dad sighed, seemingly for the umpteenth time. I felt the same. Lucas said he was sorry for causing a disturbance. A disturbance, that's all. Not once did he apologize for what he said to me. This is beyond insulting. Cutting off Lucas's attempt to say something else, I presented a piece of paper. The divorce papers. Do you know how to fill them out? I've already done mine, for your reference. I conveyed this deliberately politely, shocking Lucas, who hadn't expected divorce papers to come into play, his face turning ashen. Wait, Grace, please! Divorce, you can't be serious! For the first time since arriving, Lucas seemed to genuinely look at me. To him, I was always secondary. It shouldn't matter to you, right, Lucas? You have your mother, after all. If that's his stance, I'll treat him as a business acquaintance, speaking to him with due courtesy. I have no intention of repairing this relationship. That sentiment needed to be clearly communicated. What are you talking about? Why bring up my mother now? She was looking forward to the trip too. We could always go on a trip, you and I, right? Astonishing. Lucas has not grasped why I was so angry and left. We could always go? What are you talking about? It was supposed to be our honeymoon. My body shakes uncontrollably, and I gently press my right hand against it to steady myself. My lips, pressed tightly together, hurt. What kind of husband tries to take his mother on a honeymoon planned by his wife? Expressing it out loud only makes me feel more pathetic. Yet, Lucas, as if to rub salt in the wound, insists further. But, that's why I initially tried to take her with us. You're the one who said there were no flights for Mom, or that hotels couldn't be booked, right, Grace? Think about it logically. There's no way we could book anything on the day itself. I can't believe it. He is serious. Amidst my confusion, anger surfaces as he genuinely yells that I am the one at fault. And you're telling me to send my mom back when she was looking forward to it so much? Lucas's near-aggressive outburst is quietly halted by my dad. That's enough. Stop it. My dad, who had been silently listening, shakes his head in dismay. Lucas, I'm disappointed in you. Suddenly regaining his composure at those words, Lucas straightens up quickly. My dad looks at him with a sad gaze. Why did you prioritize your mother over Grace in that situation? No, well... Pressed by my dad, Lucas starts sweating. He might be able to argue back at me, but he can't do the same with my dad. A honeymoon is for the couple to go on. You could have gone on any trip with your mother later. Was everything you said about cherishing my daughter a lie? It's not a lie. I just wanted to cherish my mother as well. Lucas's spontaneous outcry is met with my dad's first glare. So, you're fine with Grace getting hurt? Lucas falls silent, visibly straining. I'm so sorry. He was mumbling an apology in a trembling voice. But his clenched fist seemed to scream of humiliation. He's apologizing because he has to. Not because he wants to. He probably doesn't think he's done anything wrong. He's just apologizing because my dad, the CEO, is angry, that's all. Lucas, you're a capable worker. My dad says, making Lucas feel relieved, thinking perhaps he's forgiven, but he quickly realizes his mistake. A gaze colder than a midwinter lake pierces Lucas. But no matter how good you are at your job, I can't trust someone who doesn't value his family. My dad hands him a pen, causing Lucas to tremble.
Wait, please. Not divorce. I'll change, I promise.
Lucas refuses to take the pen, so my dad forces it into his hand.
You shouldn't be apologizing to me.
Now Lucas starts clinging to me.
Grace, please say something. I'm begging you. Please don't divorce me.
Lucas pleads, coming to my feet and looking up at me as he clings to my legs, trying to escape from my dad's judgment.
I'll prioritize you from now on.
I'm beyond tears now. His words are laced with disrespect towards me.
Please. If we get divorced, I won't be able to pay off my debts.
Seeing that neither my dad nor I are nodding in agreement, Lucas blurts out in desperation.
Debt? What's that?
As I look down at his disheveled head, repeating the word I've heard for the first time, Lucas jumps back in surprise. He clearly had let it slip accidentally. He covers his mouth as if he said too much.
Well, that.
My dad and I demand the whole story with just a look, and Lucas finally begins to speak, resigned.
The truth is.
The truth he hesitantly shares is enough to make both my dad and me hold our heads in our hands. It turns out Lucas and his mother had been living extravagantly, believing that the CEO position and its perks were guaranteed to fall into their lap. The reason Lucas had been going back to his mother's house every week was to squander money together.
There's even less reason to keep you married now.
My dad says with utter disdain, Lucas finally showing a genuine gesture of apology.
Please wait. If we get divorced, I don't know what I'll do tomorrow.
His repeated apologies are almost comical, like a toy I've seen somewhere before.
This has nothing to do with us.
I say with a dry gaze, waiting for Lucas to sign the divorce papers. There's nothing more to say, so my dad and I quietly sip our coffee. Of course, without offering any to Lucas. Though the divorce papers were somewhat forced, the divorce was finalized smoothly. The lawyer my dad hired was extremely competent, and with the detailed diary I kept, negotiations proceeded smoothly. We even claimed additional compensation for the honeymoon trip I had to cancel, and though there was an attempt to negotiate the amount down through the lawyers, my dad dismissed it before I could respond, making me laugh when he told me about it. As for Lucas, he quit his job almost immediately after the divorce became known at his company, leaving hastily. With no significant severance pay and only a small amount of savings, he managed to pay the alimony and debt repayment, leading to a much more modest lifestyle, I was informed by the lawyer. And his mother, now bedridden, has been living off part-time jobs, reaching out to former colleagues asking for money. While it's unclear how much of this is true, it's become a humorous story at gatherings. As for me, encouraged by my dad and other employees, it looks like I'll be taking over as the next CEO. Though I've resisted, not wanting to be at the forefront, my dad convinced me, showing a rare moment of vulnerability by not wanting to leave the company in unreliable hands. Feeling responsible for causing my father such distress, I was initially reluctant. However, it seems I might have inherited his talent for management after all. With his support as chairman, our company's performance has been on the rise, even if only slightly. Thanks to gaining some confidence, I've been getting more attention at gatherings with other CEOs. I'm not thinking about new romance just yet, but maybe it's time to take the next step forward. My name is Natalie Irwin. I'm a 33-year-old stay-at-home mom. I work in a specialized IT field. My husband, Henry, who is 2 years my senior, is a hard-working salaryman at a mid-sized company. We are in our 5th year of marriage, and we have a 4-year-old daughter named Anna. My daughter loves playing with dolls, and Henry is always so sweet and doting on her. He's always ready to buy her toys and clothes, and I spend my days gently dissuading him with a laugh. I don't want to cut corners with my work or house chores, always thinking about how to manage my tasks more efficiently each day. Henry never forgets to express his gratitude to me.
Natalie, thank you for everything.
And when he has some free time, he always helps me out. We've come this far, hand in hand, in housework and parenting. Henry has been a good husband and a good father, by all accounts. We're a happy family, to anyone looking in. But, on the surface only. I know my husband's secret. He's having an affair. In other words, he has a mistress. I found out by accident. When I went to pick up our daughter from kindergarten, I saw him walking with a woman I didn't recognize. At first, I was shocked and thought maybe she was a colleague from his office. But after secretly following them, I saw them enter a hotel meant for such encounters, and my hopeful assumptions were dashed. I was stunned that day, even arriving late to pick up my daughter. I apologized to my slightly upset daughter and went home. My memories of how I interacted with Henry when he returned home that day are vague. Unaware that I had seen him, Henry acted as usual. I wanted to believe it was a misunderstanding. But, a calm part of my mind denied that possibility. Since then, I've started to investigate around my husband a bit. Maybe I wanted to find evidence to refute what I had seen. However, the more I found, the more the evidence reinforced the fact that Henry was having an affair. I gave in and acknowledged it. Henry is having an affair. Once I accepted that, he suddenly seemed like a repulsive creature to me. Divorce crossed my mind. I at least wanted a smooth divorce. But I wondered if a friendly separation was even possible under these circumstances. Custody, alimony, child support, the issues were numerous. But I had no intention of forgiving my husband anymore. I made an effort to act normally, so Henry wouldn't suspect anything. Every time Henry touched our daughter, I screamed inside my head, "Don't touch her with those dirty hands that have touched another woman." So, very naturally and subtly, I started to keep my daughter away from Henry. Fortunately, he didn't notice. Is this for my daughter's sake? No, it's for me. Because I can't stand it. While questioning myself, I quietly continued to gather evidence of his affair, even using a detective agency. Then one day, I found out Henry and his mistress were touring various wedding venues for their dates. Henry was managing to carve out time for both his family and his mistress. Of course, he was lying to me when he met with his mistress, but I pretended not to notice. I was astounded that he couldn't direct his passion towards something else. I decided to follow Henry and his mistress on their date. Pretending to see off Henry, who said he was going to work on his day off, I left the house too. I had left our daughter with my parents. Thinking my usual car would be too obvious, I rented a car for the day. After confirming the mistress getting into Henry's car, I followed them at a safe distance. I might say, my tailing skills weren't too shabby. Henry's car slid into the parking lot of a wedding venue. It seemed there was a by-appointment viewing event going on. I parked my car in a nearby lot and waited for the two to come out of the wedding venue. And then, the moment finally arrived. As they came out of the wedding venue, all smiles, I made my move.
Huh? Henry? What are you doing here? Eh?
Feigning surprise, I called out to him, and he stood there agape, recognizing me, someone who shouldn't be here. His face turned pale and drained of blood in the next moment.
Eh? Natalie? What are you doing here? I thought you were going to be at home all day today. Oh, I suddenly had some free time, so I was having tea with a friend nearby. Right now, my friend is on a call, so I'm waiting.
While spinning this lie, I stared at the woman hidden behind my husband. I couldn't see her face, but it seemed she was just as surprised by my sudden appearance as Henry was.
And who might this lady be? And a wedding venue, what was the purpose? Well, this is...
My husband stammered. I let out a sigh and looked down sadly. Just kidding. I'm sorry. I've been causing you pain, haven't I? I already know. That you have another woman you love besides me. My husband's eyes widened in shock. I purposely moistened my eyes. I'm sorry that because of me, you couldn't vow your eternal love.
Natalie! I didn't mean...
It's okay. Don't say anything more. Please take this. I said, pulling out a signed divorce paper and a gift envelope from my pocket. I placed them in Henry's hand and smiled at him, making sure to let a single tear fall. Even if we part, I'm rooting for you. Thank you for everything. Be happy. Henry looked stunned, gazing at my face. I quickly pulled away and, without heeding Henry's call to stop, I hurried off. Then, I got into the car and made my way home. By then, my tears had already retreated. It was all an act. Henry was probably planning to make some excuse. Something like, "This is a misunderstanding," or, "She and I aren't in that kind of relationship." But I didn't listen to any of it. Instead, I played the part of a noble woman who wishes happiness for the person she loves. Was my acting a bit too much? But, perhaps going overboard was just right. I felt like I had become an actress, but since I planned to continue deceiving my husband and exacting my revenge thoroughly, it wasn't a mistake. I returned the rental car and caught a taxi home. Upon arriving, I first checked the luggage I had packed earlier. I loaded my and my daughter's belongings into the car and then waited for Henry to come home. Checking my phone, I found dozens of calls and messages from Henry. The phone kept ringing while I waited, but I ignored it completely. Soon, I heard the hurried sound of someone entering through the front door.
Natalie! Are you here?
I'm here. Welcome home.
I'm home.
Henry, opening the door to the living room with a bang, was out of breath as he looked at me. I calmly replied and looked back at him. A moment of silence. Henry was the first to break it.
Natalie, about what happened earlier.
Did you submit the divorce papers? As I ignored Henry's attempt to speak and asked, he shook his head vigorously. Then, he pulled out the folded divorce papers and the envelope from his pocket and thrust them at me.
I wouldn't submit them, of course. Please, just listen to me. It's not what it looks like.
There's no need to talk. I understand it all. It's okay. I'll step back gracefully. As I said this sorrowfully and looked down, Henry became even more flustered.
No, you've got it wrong. It's a misunderstanding. She's just an acquaintance.
Just someone you know, and you go to a wedding venue with her?
Well, that is, actually, her boyfriend suddenly couldn't make it to the viewing, but she still wanted to get a feel for the atmosphere, so she asked me to substitute.
That must have been an excuse Henry desperately thought up on the way home. I smiled slightly, making sure Henry couldn't see. How absurd. Then you should have just said so in the morning before you left. Saying you had to work on a holiday. You lied because you had something to hide, didn't you?
That's... I thought you would worry.
Being lied to is far more worrying, don't you think? You did something that would obviously make anyone think you wanted to see her so badly. Or was it intentional? Did you lie on purpose to test me? Henry fell silent. If you're going to lie, you should have prepared your story better, like me. I sighed softly. There's no need for excuses. As I said earlier, I had already sensed that your heart belonged to another woman. It must be my fault. Because I couldn't keep your heart, you ended up committing such a despicable act as infidelity.
No, that's not it. It's not Natalie's fault. It's my fault. I was weak as a husband and as a father.
I watched Henry tear up with a feeling of disgust. Truly shameless. If he had any awareness as a husband or a father, he wouldn't resort to infidelity. This man doesn't deserve to cry. Please, let's get a divorce. I still love you. You're still important to me. Of course, that was a lie. I want the person I love to be happy, even if it's not with me by their side. Natalie. Henry's voice cracked with emotion. I showed a single tear, just like I did earlier. Controlling tears isn't so hard after all. I'm an actress right now.
Let's say goodbye with a smile, okay? Please, sign this and be happy with her.
Natalie. Natalie. I'm sorry, thank you. Henry, with tears streaming down his face, shakily signed the divorce papers. I doubt this was an act from Henry, but that just made me question his nerve even more. To play the tragedy after causing all this with his infidelity. Even though I was the one who led him to it, watching my husband silently sign the divorce papers made me wonder why I ever married such a man, leaving me with a hollow feeling. He didn't even mention our daughter once throughout this whole ordeal. I'm sorry for everything turning out this way, for forcing Natalie into making such a painful decision. He's aware of what he's done, yet why did he have an affair? Nothing he says now could ever reach me. It's okay. As long as you're happy, that's all that matters to me. I parroted lines like I was reading from a script, saying things I didn't mean. I took the completed divorce papers from him and stated matter-of-factly, I'll take custody of Anna. You should build a new and happy family with her. Ah, okay. Also, as a form of closure, I'd like to ask for alimony and child support. Is that okay? Oh, yes. Of course, I'll pay. You'll need it for many things. I too wish for your happiness. Ask for any amount you see fit. Good, I've got his agreement. Even though he agreed too readily, he must be thrilled about being with his mistress. But, the one who's going to need things from now on is him, not me. I smirked to myself. Ah. By the way, where's Anna now? My husband finally asked about our daughter. Perhaps wanting to see her one last time. How shameless. Anna is with my parents since this morning. Don't worry. I'll raise her well on my own. And I'll explain everything to her properly. Okay. Can I ask you something? Where did I go wrong? You had an affair because you were dissatisfied with me, right? When I asked, my husband's eyes widened in surprise. That's not it at all. I had no complaints about Natalie. You were perfect. You managed work, house chores, and parenting all so well despite being busy. You were the ideal wife. Yet, you had an affair. They say it's partly the wife's fault when a husband strays. It's not your fault. But maybe because you were so perfect. I felt I had to live up to you, and maybe I was stretching myself too thin. It was a bit suffocating. That's why. So, you sought out another woman as a way to breathe? Yeah, that's right. It's all my fault. My husband hung his head low. He would be soon-to-be ex-husband. No matter how beautifully he crafts his excuses, the fact remains unchanged. Henry betrayed me and our daughter. It's truly sickening. I'll only take the essentials with me. You and she can use this house. What about you and Anna? I'm thinking of going back to my parents' place for a while. After that, I'll find a place of our own. This too was a lie. In reality, I had already found a new place. And had been moving our things there bit by bit without him noticing. The stuff packed in the car was just the last of it. While I do plan to go to my parents first, I intend to move into our new home soon after. I've already found a new school for Anna. Unaware of how smoothly everything is progressing, Henry's eyes welled up with gratitude. If you're okay with that, I'll gratefully accept this house. Thank you so much. Yeah. Oh, and I'll take care of all the rental payments and other paperwork. I'll send you the documents later. Oh, yeah. Henry looked momentarily stunned at the mention of rent. After all, this apartment is a rental, so paying rent is a given. It seems he had completely forgotten even such a basic detail. I wonder if he even knows how much the rent is. I've been the one handling all our payments. Sure, Henry contributed to the household expenses, but he likely doesn't know the details. I stood up, smiling brightly. Let's part with a smile, even if it's a lie. Then, goodbye. Thank you for everything. No matter where I am, I'll be wishing for your happiness. Ah. Before Henry could respond, I left the house, quickly got into the car and drove away. Henry tried to chase after me, but by then I had already started the car. I drove straight to the city hall and submitted the divorce papers. Then, I headed to my parents' house, where my mom greeted me. "Mom, sorry for the sudden visit."
"No, it's okay. Did you manage to have a proper talk with Henry?" "Yeah. It's all settled now." "Has Anna gone to sleep already?" "Yes, just a bit ago. She was trying to stay awake until you came."
"I see. Mom, thank you. I'm really sorry for the suddenness." My mom just hugged me silently. I could feel the facade of lies and acting slowly melting away from my face. But there is no crying. There's no time for tears.
"You must be tired. Are you hungry? I'll warm up some food."
"Oh, yeah. I might be." Feeling somewhat relieved, I suddenly remembered my hunger. My parents' house welcomed me just the same, unchanged. First, I checked on Anna. She was peacefully asleep in a spacious room. "WY Dad," whispered, "Welcome back," as I entered. Seeing my daughter's sleeping face, I knew I could endure anything for her. I smiled at my dad and daughter. Perhaps the first genuine smile of the day. That night, I ate my mom's cooking, took a long bath, and fell asleep next to my daughter. The next day, I went to my in-laws' house. Now my former in-laws, but I had to report to them properly. It was part of the plan. The sudden visit without any prior contact surprised them.
"Natalie, what's going on? It's not like you to come without letting us know first."
"I'm sorry for dropping by suddenly. Just at the entrance is fine. I no longer have the right to step inside your house."
"Eh?"
My former in-laws looked puzzled. I put on a sorrowful expression again. "I'm sorry, the truth is, Henry and I are getting a divorce."
"Eh?"
"It's because I wasn't good enough as a wife. Henry ended up having an affair."
"An affair? Henry did?"
My former in-laws' eyes widened as they looked at each other. "Yes. I'm stepping aside for Henry's happiness. He'll probably remarry the woman he had an affair with soon. So, Henry won't be alone."
"Wait a minute. An affair, even though he has a wife like Natalie? Not just Natalie. There's Anna too. How could he?"
My former father-in-law held his head, and my former mother-in-law covered her face with both hands. We had always had a somewhat distant relationship. So, I wasn't entirely sure how they would react to this news, but it seems their good nature has made them sympathize with me.
"An affair, such an unthinkable act. Oh, did I raise him wrong?"
"It's not your fault, ma'am. It's my fault for not being a place of comfort for him. To him, I was nothing but a burden. It was natural for him to seek relief outside our home."
"That's not true, Natalie. The one who had an affair is at fault, obviously. He's abandoned the family he was supposed to protect. What was he thinking?"
My former in-laws comforted me, telling me we are on your side, and if there's anything they can do to help, just say the word. They said Anna is always welcome to visit. I was fortunate to have such kind in-laws. As I drove back to my parents' house, I suddenly remembered and put on my earphones. Fiddling with my smartphone, I checked if the listening device I left in the house was still working. It was something I had secretly installed in Henry's room to gather evidence of his affair. It was quite high-tech, allowing me to listen in real time even from afar. Through the earphones, I could hear a man and a woman arguing fiercely. The man was Henry, and the woman was likely his mistress.
"You never told me. Were you deceiving me?" "Please, calm down, Hillary. I didn't mean for it to happen. It was just bad timing." "Timing? What timing are you talking about? The fact that you were married and dating me without telling me doesn't change. Making me a part of your affair. You're the worst." "Yes, that's true, but I'm sorry. I've already divorced my wife, so there's nothing shameful." I'm single again, and there's nothing stopping us from getting married. Please, marry me. I've dreamed of marrying you and worked hard to get here.
As I suspected, Henry had approached his lover pretending to be single. This was also suggested as a possibility in the report from the detective agency, so it made sense to me. Moreover, Henry seems to have lied about his age. All that just to date a younger woman. I'm done listening to any excuses. It's confirmed, Henry is the worst scumbag. I recalled the mistress's profile in my mind. Her name is Hillary Reed. She's 26 years old. Her father is the president of a company that everyone has heard of at least once, and she works there as an employee. In other words, she's a president's daughter. The nature of Hillary's meeting with Henry is speculative, but it's likely work-related. I turned off the listening device for a moment and called Henry on hands-free.
Hello? Hello?
Henry, it's me, Natalie.
Natalie. What's up? Did you forget something?
Henry's voice tried to maintain calm, but I could hear the undeniable panic beneath it. Given the situation, it was only natural, but I pretended not to notice and continued. Forget something. I guess you could say that. I thought I'd give you a parting gift.
Eh?
You know, Henry, you're planning to remarry your girlfriend, right? Naturally, you'll have a wedding ceremony, won't you? I added in my mind, considering you were attending viewings.
Yeah, that's the plan, but...
About that wedding, if you're interested, I have a friend who works at a venue. It's quite a large place, you know. Celebrities have their weddings there. I don't think you'll get this chance again.
Eh? That's a generous offer, but are you sure?
Yes. It's your new beginning, Henry. I want to celebrate it too. I'll talk to them. I think they'll be quite accommodating.
Natalie, thank you. I'll talk to her right away. Do that. I'll send you a brochure later. It's your big day, after all. It has to be splendid. Yeah, you're right. I'll do my best. For our happiness.
Oh boy, which mouth is saying that? Anyway, this should keep Henry busy trying to please her with this and that. It's almost funny how things are going exactly as I predicted, making me smile. I decided to make another call. Hello. Nice to meet you. My name is Natalie Salinger. Minutes after ending the call, I let out a breath. The appointment with the other party was set. This means my part in this is almost done. Now, just the final touches remain. Suddenly, I longed to see my dear daughter. Time to head home. I turned the steering wheel, hurrying back. About half a year later, I received a call. Hello?
Natalie. Is that you?
It was Henry's voice that came through, letting me know my plan had worked. Henry? What's up? You sound rushed. I suppressed my joy, responding calmly. He announced in a voice tone of extreme confusion.
What am I gonna do? I got fired.
Oh, really? Yep, just as expected.
That's it.
That's it. But we're strangers now, right? It's a bit troubling you're telling me this all of a sudden. I replied as if I was also perplexed, and Henry groaned. I decided to indulge him a bit. But why were you fired all of a sudden?
I don't know. I went to the office in the morning, and suddenly they called me in and said I was fired. I'm so confused. They said there was a terrible complaint from a client, but I have no idea.
I see.
And she's gone too. When I got home, the place was empty, and there was a goodbye note. Seems like she packed up and left.
Henry rambled on. Her? Your new wife?
No, we hadn't submitted the marriage registration yet. We were going to do it after the wedding ceremony at the end of this month. Now I don't know what's what.
I see. But I knew the reason. That client must be Hillary's father's company. In fact, after making that phone call for an appointment, I had met with Hillary herself and her parents. I informed them that I was Henry's ex-wife, that I had known about Henry's affair for some time, and that I had also done some digging into Hillary's background among other things. Hillary's eyes widened, and she apologized to me with tears streaming down her face. They were probably genuine tears. Even though she had been deceived into thinking he was single, the fact remains she was involved in an affair. Her parents had been told she was considering marriage and starting to live with her boyfriend Henry, but they hadn't met him personally yet. Moreover, it seems Hillary hadn't told them that she was the daughter of a company president. I decided to involve the three of them in my plan. We conspired to teach Henry a lesson. From there, the former in-laws and Hillary's family's stellar performance shone. Pretending to know nothing, they went through the motions of meeting both families and preparing for the wedding, and the plan progressed smoothly. And today, it bore fruit. Hillary's father reported to Henry's company that his daughter had been deceived by one of their employees. Pretending to be furious, he threatened to end business dealings with Henry's company. The company panicked and fired Henry. It's possible that the evidence of infidelity I had sent to his company also played a role. From looking at Henry's payslips, I knew the company was already struggling, so there might have been an element of downsizing involved. Whether he would actually be fired was a gamble, but I was confident it would work out. I mouthed serves you right to Henry's rants on the phone.
What should I do, Natalie? What can I do?
That's up to you, Henry.
But, what do you mean up to me?
Well, if she left, that means she intends to break up with you, right? First, you'll have to cancel the wedding, and pay the cancellation fee.
The cancellation fee!
Of course. You can't have a wedding by yourself.
I went all out on the options, it's going to be a huge amount. Natalie, can you ask your contact at the venue to give us a discount?
That's impossible. I only asked them to prioritize you too.
I can't afford the cancellation fee now that I'm fired. Damn it! This is like fraud. She should pay too, it's only fair.
Speaking of which, you still haven't paid this month's alimony and child support. Make sure you don't delay that, okay?
Ah. Right. That too. Sorry, Natalie, can you wait a bit for the alimony and child support? I'm almost out of savings with the rent payment, I'm really in a bad spot. I don't care. It's none of my business. If you're even a day late, I won't forgive you. You reap what you sow for having an affair. Suffer all you deserve.
I rejected Henry's requests, venting my frustrations as I did. Henry gasped for breath. I hung up the phone and let out a long sigh. Then, remembering I needed to contact the former in-laws and Hillary, I picked up my smartphone again. Afterwards, Henry managed to pay the cancellation fee for the venue using the little savings he had left, the money Hillary left behind, and by taking out loans. It seems there was a discussion between him and Hillary, but in the end, they decided to part ways. As for me, I ended up receiving alimony from Hillary as well. Despite not knowing, being involved in an affair is still an affair, and Hillary insisted on settling it as a matter of principle. Henry was cut off by the former in-laws and, to pay off the alimony, child support, and his debts, he's been working tirelessly day and night. My daughter and I moved into the new home we had prepared. Life is still ahead of us. Together with my daughter, we'll make it through.
Where are you? The ceremony's starting.
I yelled into the phone, finally getting through to my husband, Charles.
On a family trip in Hawaii. And miss our daughter's wedding?
To that, Charles just laughed heartily and hung up. Family, huh? I repeated the thought in my mind, feeling it anew. Staring at the disconnected call, I soon shook off the feeling and reached out to someone else. About the favor I asked for before, could you start on it as soon as possible? I pressed on eagerly. Yes, I'll leave everything in your hands, please begin immediately. Understood, came a vigorous reply from the other end. That person was from a construction company our family has been close with for years. I couldn't help but suppress a laugh, thinking, Go ahead, enjoy yourself to the fullest just for now. The so-called family trip. It might be your last bit of fun, after all. My name is Patricia Green, a 52-year-old. I'm a housewife with 2 children. My husband, Charles, is 55. Our marriage, about 30 years ago, was somewhat of a strategic alliance between 2 companies. However, it's likely coming to an end soon, due to Charles's repeated issues. Not that there were signs of this from the start. I, for one, wanted to build a warm home with Charles, even if our marriage was more about corporate alliance. Charles felt the same at the time. That changed after our 2 children were born. Soon after the marriage, I had our first child, John. Then our daughter, Linda, the next year. While children were a joy, parenting was harder than I imagined. Around that time, Charles, in his early 30s, was still training in his father's company. Perhaps it contributed to his stress accumulation. He rarely participated in childcare when home. The cries of our 2 children filled the house, and he did nothing. His interest seemingly faded, using work as an excuse to stay away. To be fair, I have my regrets too. Back then, I was swamped with childcare but insisted on doing it without anyone's help. It was my mother back home who came to my aid. Though my parents are no longer with us, remembering this makes me truly grateful for their presence. Without the housekeeper my mother arranged for, I would have completely succumbed to childcare stress. But once I got past that period, the kids really were adorable. With Charles often gone, engrossed in his work or at his family's place, childcare became my raison d'etre. Suspicious of his constant absence, I once asked, "Where do you always go?" Charles, who would usually dodge the question with vague answers, didn't accompany us for our son and daughter's events, prompting me to confront him. His response was, "You should just do as you please on that front. I have things I need to attend to." I couldn't fathom what was so important that it trumped our children's milestones. "What's so important that you'd miss your children's events for?" I snapped at him then. His answer was this. "You know I have a younger sister, right?" "Yes, you mentioned she's 13 years younger." "Mia, was it?"
That's right, Mia. She's having an important party, and I need to discuss some things about that with my parents."
His preference for his sister over our children made me snap. "Excuse me?" But Charles, as if it were the most natural thing, retorted, "You've been so busy with the kids, you probably didn't notice, but they're going through a tough time too." I was at a loss for words. However, the same scenario repeated itself. Charles began to excuse himself for his sister's sake, even for kindergarten and school events. He wouldn't attend the events but would go to her party. He'd miss our children's events but make it to Mia's graduation. Where does Charles consider home and who does he see as his family? I often wondered. I accompanied our children alone to their events. Father's presence faded from our children's commemorative photos. Eventually, the kids realized their father was absent from their important events. Later, they faced exams at school. And they started making decisions about further studies and jobs. They did so independently. They had first sought out what they wanted to do, then finding suitable schools and considering their options without much consultation. They'd only consult me to the extent of asking, "I want to go here, what do you think?" "I don't want to burden you," they said, a sentiment they expressed since school time. Having a clear idea of what they want isn't bad. It shows they're highly independent. But it saddens me to think they've learned not to rely on their father, understanding he's unreliable. I haven't exactly been a role model myself. Since getting married, I've been a full-time housewife. Sure, I'd occasionally get called in for something related to my family's business, and it seems my parents, along with my brother, were keen on leaving me some assets early on. My parents passed away about 10 years ago. Both still in their 70s. The company was left in the hands of my brother, Joseph, and I've been given a fair share of other assets from the inheritance. As for Mia, Charles's sister who he doted on, spoiled by him and our parents, she landed a job at a subsidiary through our father's connections after her college graduation. But she seemed to treat it as a temporary gig. After working for 2 years, she quit, as if it was time to prepare for marriage. It seems she never really liked working in the first place, and ended up living a leisurely life at home. And neither her parents nor her brother, Charles, said anything about it. In fact, they seemed pleased she wasn't working, as if that was too much for her. She actively sought out arranged marriages, but for some reason, they always fell through. Mostly, it seems, due to Charles's opposition. Whenever Charles objected, Mia would simply accept it, saying, "If my brother says so." Before we knew it, she was in her 40s. And she is unmarried, just continuing on as she always has. By contrast, her parents are now in their 80s. Unlike my parents who passed away early, they're still hardy and robust, but you'd think there'd be some concern. Yet, Mia does nothing, living carefree as ever. The father remains the company president, with no sign of Charles taking over. Charles might be eager to take the helm, but his father isn't budging. I couldn't tell you why. I've been fed up with Charles for a long time. Even my brother and his wife said it might be best to part ways at some point, and with the kids now independent, I'm thinking about starting a second chapter in my life. Fortunately, my parents transferred a significant amount of assets to me early on. With that, I could start something new or just take a break. I've been thinking it over for a long time. And I've been gathering evidence to ensure I come out ahead in the divorce. My brother's lawyer has been giving me plenty of advice. But then, something happened that put those plans on hold. Linda is getting married. Her fiancé is 8 years her senior, a colleague from Mike's company where she met him working as a senior employee. He's quite capable, rumored to be transferring to an overseas branch soon. Linda, having seen Mia as a cautionary tale, made sure never to disclose her family connections at work.
Flaunting such things is foolish. Just like at school, showing off wealth only makes you disliked.
It was Linda's reasoning. I've tried to inform Charles about the wedding. But as expected, he keeps saying he's too busy and flees the conversation. I just respond with, "Oh, is that so?" when looking at him. I still sent him the invitation and details via card or message. But I didn't bother to confirm his attendance. And on the day, we all headed to the wedding venue. But even on the morning of the day, there was no sign of Charles showing up. I decided to give Charles a call.
"Where are you?" "The ceremony's about to start." "On a family trip in Hawaii."
I blinked in surprise at his response.
"And miss your daughter's wedding?"
To that, Charles just laughed heartily and hung up. I sighed and looked up at the ceiling for a few seconds. Family, huh? Family. I repeated it several times in my mind. Probably, the trip to Hawaii was with his parents and Mia. Though I knew it, this really was the last straw. To Charles, family meant his folks back home, not us. Of course, I've known this for a long time. I had no expectations from a marriage of convenience. He probably felt the same. The difference between Charles and me was that I initially tried to make a family. And Charles did not. Continuing this charade for over 20 years was for the children's sake. The children themselves might not have cared whether their father was present or not. Still, I wanted to maintain some semblance of normalcy until they became adults. That might have just been my pride. The children might have found it easier without such pretenses. Well, that's fine. Taking a deep breath, I made another call. Speaking to a distant voice on the other end, hello, it's me. Yes, Patricia Green. About the matter I asked you before, could you please start on it as soon as possible? I spoke rapidly. Yes, I leave everything in your hands. Please start immediately. Understood, came a spirited reply from the other side. The person on the other line was from a construction and architecture company our family has been associated with for years. And I thought to myself with a suppressed laugh, go ahead, enjoy yourself to the fullest just for now. The so-called family trip. This might be your last bit of fun, after all. Then, a month later, I received a call. I answered on my tablet. There, a lawyer beamed at me with a full smile.
Mrs. Green, or rather, Ms. Williams, would be more appropriate now.
The lawyer called me by my maiden name.
So, the documents have been processed, then?
My voice perked up unexpectedly.
Yes, I've made sure to compile everything properly.
The lawyer on the screen has been affiliated with my family's company. Continuing, I asked him,
Could you tell me what's happened in these last 2 weeks? Anticipating that you'd ask, I've prepared all the necessary information.
I couldn't help but smile gleefully at the lawyer through the screen. Right now, there's a distance half the globe's circumference between me and the lawyer. Yes, I've bought a house in Russia and am living here. This is because my daughter's husband was transferred to an overseas branch, as had been mentioned before their wedding. According to Linda, he was so concerned about my language skills.
But, you won't know until you try, and once you're there, you'll manage somehow. So, it's going to be fine. I've always made do.
She had said confidently, and the newlyweds are living in Russia, at the branch now. And I'm living in a separate house on their property. Partly for security reasons. The lawyer I'm seeing on my screen seemed to have adjusted some equipment on his end.
First, here's this.
He showed me what had happened during Charles and their Hawaii trip. Hold on, why can't we get into this hotel today? Was his father shouting. Under a bright blue sky, he was wearing an aloha shirt.
I'm sorry, but today we have an exclusive wedding and party booking. What? The top hotel on the Big Island?
Yes, that wedding on the Big Island was Linda and her husband's. Though Charles and his family had flown from New York to Honolulu and then to Maui, we had directly gone to the Big Island of Hawaii. We planned to enjoy the resort leisurely before the ceremony. They had no idea about any of this. Even so, I had made sure to inform them on the day, but it was ridiculous they didn't even know we were on the Big Island. It really showed how little they cared about us. It's strange, said the lawyer.
Patricia, you did inform them of your destination, right? I did, through postcards and messages. They usually don't catch me, so it was kind of surprising the call got through on the day of the wedding, probably for their family trip showcase.
The lawyer laughed at that absurdity.
I made it clear we were having the ceremony abroad, here at this hotel on the Big Island. Yet, there they were, in front of the hotel, clueless they couldn't stay. They could have at least said they were attending the wedding.
In the video, the disgruntled family could be seen complaining. Mia's confused face, not understanding what was being said to her, was also visible. Picking up whispers from the surrounding staff, I heard them say those were the people supposed to attend the ceremony today. Indeed, we had instructed the employees to do so. If these individuals arrived and claimed they were here for the ceremony, let them in. If not, just here for a meal or stay, then, as we had the place booked for our wedding, they should not be allowed in. The ceremony was held grandly, and my daughter, her husband, and we left for Russia from Hawaii's international airport that same day. We had no intentions of returning to New York anymore. Meanwhile, furious, they seemed to have intended to return to New York from the same airport. But they were stopped there. Because Charles's card had been deactivated. Moreover, staff that had followed them captured this moment on video.
What do you mean? My credit can't be used? This one, too? Indeed, sir. The card is not in your name, correct?
Indeed, that was the case. Charles had taken my credit and bank debit cards, so I had them stopped. That bank account contained my personal assets. Charles had tapped into it. Though I pretended not to notice. Doing so was bound to be discovered eventually. I had a separate account set aside that I could freely use, so even if one was depleted, it wouldn't impact my lifestyle. I overlooked it to gather evidence.
Damn, why has it been deactivated? Of course, because the owner stopped it, right? If you say that, we can't go back. We don't have that much cash.
Seeing Charles getting angry, the staff sighed, anyway, these cards are unusable, so you cannot board the flight back to New York, and turned them away from the airport. Then, they had no choice but to return to Honolulu and borrow cash somehow. Attempting to borrow from acquaintances first, which also took some time. Their scheduled stay had already passed, leaving no room for pride. After all, the reason was the stoppage of the cards. Deemed to have problematic behavior, they were slightly detained. Barely making it back to New York, they refunded the travel fares from their account, but upon returning home to complain to me, they found nothing there. The sight of them, especially Charles yelling in front of the now empty lot, was too much. I couldn't help but laugh. "What is this?" Charles screamed in front of where the house used to be. And his parents dropping their luggage. Our home was built nearly 30 years ago by my parents as a new house for our marriage. It was well maintained and could have been sold if desired. But as it was my possession, and I intended to live in Russia, I wanted nothing left there. So, anything clearly belonging to Charles was stored in a locker, and everything else was disposed of by a service provider. That was the other call I made on the day of the wedding. What on earth? Charles was scratching his head on the spot, stomping his feet, and eventually fell to his knees, pounding his suitcase furiously. Seeing that, I couldn't help myself and burst into loud laughter. Hearing my laughter, Linda came over. "What's going on, Mom?"
Just look, Linda. Your father is having quite the meltdown.
"He's not my father anymore," Linda said as she stared at the screen I was pointing to. On the screen was an empty lot with a for sale sign, beautifully cleared. "Ah, that's where our house used to be. Completely emptied out," Linda said with a wry smile. This girl, during her teenage years, seemed to find her father, who excessively doted on her aunt, utterly creepy. I knew she always said she wanted to cut ties as soon as possible.
I'm glad it brings joy to your daughter,"
he continued.
"No, seriously, thank you for the entertaining footage. But that's not all, right?"
I asked.
"Indeed, that's not all,"
the lawyer said with a mischievous grin. "Next is this," showing Charles with a frustrated look, glaring at something. The lawyer commented. "What on earth is this?" A slam on the desk could be heard. "It's nothing out of the ordinary. Your wife, Patricia, asked for the divorce papers to be filled out."
"Patricia would never say such a thing."
"Why would you say that?" Charles started to say something, then seemed to have a realization.
"That's right, the cards. Why on earth did she stop the cards?"
"That's obvious," the lawyer replied matter-of-factly. "Anyone would do the same if they found out a significant amount of money was being used from their account without permission. Why were you using Patricia's cards in the first place? Didn't you have your own?" Charles just muttered a stifled sound and fell silent. "Or was it that you didn't have enough leeway in your finances?" We had looked into that area as well. Honestly, there wasn't much money in Charles or his parents' accounts at the moment. Just a small portion for company operations, and everything else had been siphoned from my savings. He took my card with the selfish interpretation that it was family money. I never gave permission. So, when I said to stop it, that was the end of it. Moreover, after stopping it, we found out a significant amount was embezzled.
Embezzlement? No, this was supposed to be marital assets, right?
That's not correct. What are you talking about? Didn't you know? The lawyer asked, puzzled. The funds you were using were Patricia's personal assets from before the marriage.
From before our marriage? No, that can't be right. Patricia never said anything like that.
She probably didn't feel the need to mention it, as long as nothing happened. But something did happen, didn't it?
What do you mean?
Charles stood up abruptly. Patricia said there's no meaning in being a family with you anymore. At least, your children no longer consider you their father.
What are you talking about?
That's to be expected. Do you even know which universities your daughter and son went to, what they studied, and who they married? And most importantly, do you know where your daughter's wedding took place? Charles was at a loss for words. The lawyer then informed him about the day and location of Linda's wedding. Charles's expression changed drastically. Could it be, he murmured under his breath. Yes,
the hotel you tried to stay at that day.
That place, Charles leaned forward.
Didn't you hear there was a wedding happening that day? Sure, but I never imagined that the wedding. Why didn't they let us in then?
It's quite simple. The lawyer explained the instructions I had given to the hotel.
Patricia had already informed you. Why don't you check your smartphone? Haven't you checked it all? Or did you have another phone?
Bombarded with questions, Charles remained silent. It makes sense he couldn't connect. Charles probably had multiple smartphones. And he kept the one that could reach me turned off. The continuous lack of read receipts on messages sent had been anticipated. Asking if he had changed his phone would have yielded a new number at best. I deliberately chose not to ask. It was all part of my plan. The evidence of the messages I had sent remained. I had left numerous voicemails. I made sure to sound increasingly agitated, questioning if he was listening, wanting him to see. The same went for the messages. All other methods had been attempted. Yet, Charles had shut out everything that could connect to me. So, the lawyer continued.
Patricia will also be filing a lawsuit against you for the misuse of funds, and for neglecting the family, she'll be seeking damages. Oh, and I heard from your family that the financial support for the company will be cut off as well. That can't be! Let me see Patricia, please!
Charles pleaded, almost crying.
That's pointless. Why? Where is Patricia now? She's certainly not in the USA anymore.
Charles's face at that moment was unbearable to watch.
After the wedding, Patricia and everyone immediately headed to Russia. Huh? And you were detained, right? By then, they had already leisurely made their way.
Hearing this, Charles was visibly shaking with clenched fists. Watching from the side, Linda couldn't help but let out a suppressed giggle. Seeing our reaction, the lawyer asked, "How do you find it?" "Extremely entertaining footage." "Do you have more?" I inquired. "Yes, I do," the lawyer responded.
This was recorded recently when the corporate alliance was also dissolved following your finalized divorce. Joseph and I had gone directly to their company.
He showed me another video.
The funding is cut off? What does that mean? Our company can't survive without your support.
This time it was the in-laws who were outraged. Both had faces well tanned from the sun.
Yes, well, what's with the suntan? Did you go on a trip somewhere?
On the screen, Joseph was asking the FIL.
To the wedding,
Linda's?
Yes. Linda's wedding. It was in Hawaii.
Joseph smirked.
Actually, I was there that day too.
The two in-laws gasped.
Of course. It was my lovely niece's wedding. My wife and I attended the ceremony on the Big Island that day. Oh, and by the way, I'm well aware of what you were doing that day too.
Sweat streamed down the in-laws' faces.
Moreover, you couldn't immediately recall Linda's name, could you? How much interest do you really have in those kids?
Joseph seized the moment to press them further.
For having just 2 grandchildren, not even remembering one of their names, what does that say about you? Well, those kids never warmed up to us. Warmed up? Have you ever done anything for them?
They were both at a loss for words. But then, suddenly, there was the sound of someone bursting into the room.
Wow, heavyweight, impressive. How old is this person now?
Linda gasped, voicing her surprise. The screen abruptly showed Mia. She's 42, actually.
My husband's 10 years older than her. Oh no! She was a parasite single then.
Indeed, by today's terms, that was exactly it.
Thinking about it, she's been living as a parasite single for 20 years. So, what's she going to do now?
I turned back to the screen. How are we supposed to survive if the funding is cut off? What am I supposed to do? Mia was confronting not the lawyer, but her parents. What's going to happen? Well, the divorce is finalized, and as such, we have no reason to finance you anymore, the lawyer said.
What? Why did you let the divorce go through? Don't you get it yet?
There were many reasons, but the clincher was the embezzlement by you folks.
But it was marital assets.
Joseph sighed deeply. Charles said the same thing. Well, of course, we were concerned, so we had already gifted Patricia her assets before the marriage as a living will.
Does that mean you didn't trust us?
Trust? There's no trust to be had with someone who misuses their spouse's property. Besides, how long have your son neglected his wife, daughter, and children? The in-laws were at a loss for words. Even I, as their uncle, attended their important events. Of course, Patricia came to our house too. Well, the fact that we stopped talking about such matters long ago probably means they stopped considering you family a long time ago. Joseph seemed to relish calling out the in-laws. Just as you deluded yourselves into thinking those three were a different family. Oh yes, Charles told Patricia on the day of the wedding he was going to Hawaii with family. The father-in-law looked up in shock, and the mother-in-law covered her face. Family? Whose family, I wonder? Joseph directed a very pleasant smile at the in-laws and Mia.
That was the final blow. How was it? Thank you. I'm very satisfied. Please proceed with the next steps. There's not much in the way of procedures left, to be honest.
Linda and I exchanged smiles at the lawyer's words. Later on, the lawyer kept us updated. Joseph also reached out from time to time. Firstly, the in-laws company, unable to secure funding, was on the brink of bankruptcy and was absorbed by Joseph's company. Saving the employees was a must. The assistance to their company was originally because of the quality of what the employees made, not because the in-laws' management was any good. I hadn't heard much about this from the parents, but Joseph explained it anew. The father-in-law was ousted from his position as president. The in-laws sold some land they owned and moved to a rental. Now, they're pondering their future. They apparently aged significantly by the ordeal and facing health issues due to stress. And Charles, belatedly fussing about reserving a spot in a nursing home. He finds it financially challenging to do so now. Charles somehow managed to secure a re-employment opportunity at an acquaintance's company. Given their past relationship, the acquaintance reluctantly agreed to hire him. However, after learning about the divorce and realizing Charles was untrustworthy, his position was downgraded from a permanent employee to a contract worker. It's a clear message: any wrongdoing, and he's out. Though I think it's still too lenient, for the sake of repaying his debts, I hope he keeps the job. As for Mia, well, that's a whole other story. She's currently living in a rental with her parents. After spending 20 years as a parasite single, she's practically incapable of doing anything. Yet, as their savings dwindle, her desperate parents have persuaded her to start visiting the job center. However, her job expectations are too high, making it difficult for her to find employment. Well, that's to be expected. I thought about the possibility of her getting married, but, of course, that's a high hurdle too. I can only marvel at how she spent those 20 years. Meanwhile, our life in Russia is incredibly bright and refreshing. Living abroad comes with its dangers, of course. John, still in New York, calls often, worried, but I reassure him each time that we're okay. I even tell him to visit us sometime, hopefully with a wonderful wife in tow, which makes him shyly evade the suggestion. As long as we choose a safe area, life here is serene. Learning Russian slowly, getting along with other American families, and enjoying the sunny, dry climate makes every day an adventure of pondering, what shall we do next? Divorce has its timing. I won't say my 30 years of married life were all bad. But letting go now has opened up a new chapter for me. I look forward to a fun and energetic life with my daughter and her husband. Hey, why are you hanging out over there? You should show a little concern. Wipe off my sweat too. You're my wife, after all. I no longer feel obligated to worry about you. You've lost the right to expect marital duties from me since you cheated. I coldly stated this and showed Harrison and my sister the photo I had. As soon as I revealed this truth in the hospital room, my sister was greatly shaken. At that moment, I faced an unbelievable sight. My name is Sally, a 28-year-old office worker. After graduating from college, I joined a logistics company and have been working hard ever since. Life as a working adult was harder than I imagined, both physically and mentally, but I was happy to work as a permanent employee and receive a salary. Busy yet fulfilling, I started to get accustomed to my job around the time I met Harrison through a friend's introduction. Harrison worked for a major corporation, the epitome of an elite, with a fast mind and extensive knowledge, trusted by juniors and superiors alike. He was approachable and humble, a person of good character. When I confided in him about my work troubles, he listened intently and gave me precise advice. So, when the irresistibly charming Harrison proposed dating with marriage in mind, I was so surprised that I raised my voice. After all, Harrison seemed like a person from another world to me. 3 years have passed since we got married, and I am still continuing my job smoothly. We don't have children yet, but Harrison and I live happily as a couple. On weekends, we relax by watching movies and sometimes go on drives to sightsee. My parents' house is about an hour's drive from where we live in the city center, and my parents were very close, enjoying traveling together as their hobby. My father passed away from illness a few years ago, but since then, I've been worried about my mother, who is now alone, and frequently visit my parents' house. Since the drive doubles as a visit and my husband also says he feels comfortable at my parents' house, it naturally becomes a place we often go to. Incidentally, the timing was a bit awkward, but right after my dad passed away, my sister got divorced and moved back to our parents' house. So, I feel relieved knowing there's someone there in case something happens. My relationship with my husband and my parents' home is good, and from the outside, we look like a couple without any issues. But there's one thing that's been bothering me lately. It's that Harrison's been coming home after midnight more frequently. When I ask him why, he brushes me off, saying, "It's the busiest time right now." You work too, Sally, so you should understand how tough it is. I do understand the busyness of peak times. However, he has never come home this late since we got married. So, I'm really worried he might be pushing himself too hard. Mom says the same, but you're worrying too much, Harrison said, not even trying to hide his wry smile. Seeing his attitude, I felt it was useless to say anything more and stopped the conversation. All right, take care. I've prepared a bath for you, so go soak and relax. To that, Harrison just replied, thanks, and headed to the bathroom. When did he start keeping such a distance? There was a time, no matter how busy, he wouldn't show this kind of attitude. Do people change over time? Or is this what they call the doldrums in a relationship? Despite the lingering unease in my heart, I decided to just go to bed and was about to head to the bedroom when something brightly colored caught my eye from Harrison's bag on the sofa. Curiosity got the better of me, despite thinking I shouldn't snoop through his things, and I picked it up. The emotions I had tried to suppress came flooding back. It was a red watch. And it was the one I had given to my sister. It was a watch from her favorite brand that I had custom-made for her birthday last year. She seemed to really love it. Worry races through my mind, but there's no point in dwelling on it. I have to get up early tomorrow, but at this rate, I don't think I'll be able to sleep. After a while, Harrison came out of the bath and entered the bedroom. Hey, Harrison, I hate to bring this up before bed, but there's something I need to ask, I started. Harrison looked a bit troubled and said, what's up, but I continued without hesitation. Why do you have this? I said that, showing him the red watch. Harrison's face changed. Oh, this. I borrowed it because I wanted to check the time, but I accidentally took it home with me. I was planning to return it the next time we met but forgot, Harrison explained. I see. That puts my mind at ease. That's all I wanted to ask, good night, I replied. Harrison didn't say anything and got into bed. But even after that, the unease in my heart didn't clear, and I ended up hardly sleeping until morning. Ever since that incident, I've had many anxious nights and finally ended up getting sick. I could tell I had a fever without even using a thermometer. When I woke up, my body felt like lead, and my head throbbed continuously. It seems I've caught a cold, probably from pushing my sleep-deprived body too hard with work and household chores. When I called in sick to work, they told me to make sure to go to the doctor, but I was in no condition to drive, and I didn't have the energy or willpower to walk to the clinic. Harrison had already left the house, so getting a ride from him wasn't an option either. I had no choice but to spend the day resting in bed. If it were the old Harrison, he surely would have taken care of me, and just thinking about that made me sad. So, I tried to shake off those feelings and closed my eyes. When I woke up, the sunlight streaming in through the window was illuminating the houseplants in the room. It seems I had slept soundly. Thankfully, the terrible headache had eased, and I felt much clearer. However, I still wasn't well enough to walk around outside energetically. I reluctantly decided to ask Harrison to pick up some medicine and ingredients for dinner on his way home, and I grabbed my smartphone. Feeling sorry for bothering Harrison when he was likely busy, but thinking it's okay to lean on him a bit when I'm feeling sick, I immediately made the call. "Hello, Harrison? It's me." "What's up, Sally?" "I'm still at work." "What do you need?" I wanted to say there's no way to talk to your wife like that, but I didn't have the energy to start an argument. "I'm really sorry to bother you while you're busy. I've had a fever since this morning and called off work. The fever hasn't gone down, and I can't go out to shop. Could you pick something up on your way home?" Then, my husband sighed. "Oh, you're just being too soft on yourself." "Excuse me?"
"I think taking care of yourself is part of your job as professional. Aren't you self-aware enough? I'm too busy at work today to go home, so you'll have to handle the shopping yourself."
I don't even have the energy to go shopping. Relying too much on others will make you soft. Anyway, my boss is calling me. I gotta go," Harrison said, and then hung up. Stunned, I listened to the beep of the call ending and remained motionless for a while, phone still to my ear. Why would he talk like that to someone who's sick? No matter how busy with work, does he want to avoid talking to me that much? In the early days of our marriage, Harrison was the one who worried about me the most when I was sick, taking care of me diligently. He would go to the drugstore to buy pudding or energy drinks for me, and even called my mom to ask what's best to eat when you have a fever. What made the kind-hearted Harrison become so cold? Feeling a fever rise again, I drank some chilled mineral water from the fridge and went back to bed without thinking further. Harrison didn't return home until the deep hours of the next night. My health had already improved significantly, and I was able to go to work that morning. I wanted to go to bed early because I was still recovering, but I had something I needed to tell Harrison, so I waited for him to come home. The show I wanted to watch had already ended, and I was watching an infomercial with no particular interest when I heard the door open. I hurried to the entrance. "Welcome back, that must have been tough." "Yeah. Food and bath are ready, what will you do?" "No need for either, I'm beat. Unlike you, I don't have the luxury to rest." After witnessing Harrison's cold attitude over the phone yesterday, I didn't expect him to worry over a slight illness. However, as soon as he came home, I told him there was something I needed to say. "What?" "I'm already sleepy, make it quick." Actually, when I went to work today, my boss asked me to go on a business trip next week. I thought about the house, but since it's only for 2 or 3 days, I decided to accept. "So, I'm going to need you to take care of things at home while I'm away next week." I usually handle all the household chores, so I was a little worried about how Harrison would manage. He might even strongly object. But his response was unexpected. "A business trip, huh? When are you leaving?" Next Tuesday." "I'm not sure when I'll be back yet, I'm planning to discuss the details with my boss tomorrow. I'll let you know once it's decided." "Got it. Oh, make sure to contact me as soon as you get back." Saying that, Harrison headed to the bathroom, seemingly a bit happy for some reason. "What? Hey, weren't you going to sleep?" Changed my mind. Since you prepared it, I'm going to take a bath and freshen up before going to bed. I was a bit surprised at how Harrison's attitude brightened after hearing about the business trip. If it were the old me, I might have been pleased by the change, but now it just raises more doubts. However, with the trip starting soon, I told myself it was pointless to get worked up over speculation. Yet, Harrison's brief look of happiness stirred my unease. Why did he seem so pleased? As the trip approached, Harrison kept saying things he normally wouldn't, like leave the house to me and focus on your work during the trip. On the day of the trip, despite being busy, Harrison gave me a ride to the airport, saying, "Take care. See you on Thursday," and waved goodbye with a smile. Sitting in my seat on the plane, I reflected on Harrison's recent behavior. His cheerful demeanor, the reason for his late returns, and the red watch found in his bag came to mind. As I pondered what these could mean, I was filled with anxiety. But without any solid evidence, I told myself the business trip was still ahead and focused on heading to my destination. Then, I opened my smartphone's contact list to call home. Hello? Hey, it's Sally. Mom? Oh, it's rare for you to call. What's up? Aren't you supposed to be at work? No, actually, I'm on a business trip. I had some time, so I thought I'd call. I haven't been in touch since I last visited home. Are you okay? No cold or anything? A business trip sounds almost like a little vacation. What are you talking about? It's work, all work. Your love for travel really hasn't changed, has it? I then asked, hey, how's Kate doing lately? Anything new with her? Oh, Kate's doing well as always. She's going to work and all. Oh, but actually, she took the day off today. The house has been buzzing since this morning, and it got me up earlier than usual. She took a day off? Does she have some special plans or something? My heart started to feel uneasy. Yeah, actually, she's been preparing to go out since this morning. She's about to leave, right? I get the feeling she's dressed up more than usual. Maybe she's got a new boyfriend? I speculated. My anxiety grew, and my heartbeat quickened, just when I was trying to confirm my worries. While I was lost for words, my mom kept talking. She finally found someone new, huh? I'm happy for her. Slowly, I moved the phone away from my ear, feeling my mom's voice fade as I eventually ended the call. Leaning against the door, I stared intently at my smartphone's screen. After a while, I opened the call screen again and pressed the dial button. That night, after finishing work and returning to the hotel, I lay in bed feeling as if a weight was crushing me with fatigue. Of course, during work, I focused on the meetings with clients, not letting thoughts of those two distract me. At this point, there's no concrete evidence of an affair. So, there's no use in dwelling on it. Yet, my brain was working overtime, trying to fit any potential evidence to the case. Wondering when and if Harrison and Kate have been together lately, or maybe Kate was just dressing up for herself. And maybe Harrison was just really busy with work. But then, why did he seem so elated that time? Why didn't he show any concern when I caught a cold? I thought about calling my mom again, but asking the same questions several times a day would raise suspicion, and even if the two were meeting, it's not likely my sister would tell the truth to our mom. Oh, this is pointless, let's just focus on work for now, I decided to switch gears. Then, on Thursday night, after successfully completing the 3-day business trip, I was relaxing on the sofa at home. Unusually, Harrison had already come home, and we spent some quiet time together for the first time in a while. Everything was okay at home while I was away? Yeah, no problems at all. And the 3 days went by quicker than I thought. Really? It felt quite long to me. But I'm relieved the house isn't as messy as I imagined. Did you eat out? Yeah, mostly fast food. I managed to do the laundry even without Sally here. That's good. Oh, I bought some sweets, let's have them together. Sounds good, he replied, and I quickly prepared some tea and snacks. It was rare for us to enjoy a peaceful conversation together. This might be the perfect opportunity to clear up those suspicions. By the way, what were you up to while I was on the business trip? Oh. Work, obviously. You're not thinking I was meeting some other woman, are you? Sorry, I didn't mean it like that. I was just wondering what you were up to since it's the first time you've been alone since we got married. We always go back to our parents' house together, after all. I casually brought up the topic of going home, but Harrison's reaction didn't change. Speaking of going home, it reminded me of something. I talked to Mom for the first time in a while on the way back. I was surprised to hear that Kate might have a boyfriend. She hasn't been with anyone since her divorce. Kate has a boyfriend? But that's good for her, starting anew, right? That's great. Yeah, it is. Harrison was completely unfazed and casually ate the cake I had brought back as souvenirs. Seeing how calm he was, I didn't feel like pursuing the topic any further, and it ended there. A few days later, it was decided that Harrison would be going on a business trip to another region. Unlike my trip, this one seemed to be a long-term assignment. If successful, it could significantly boost his standing within the company, even possibly leading to an unprecedented promotion. Harrison was quite enthusiastic. Because of that, he has been coming home late almost every night, busy with preparations for the trip. Watching his buoyant demeanor, I had a hunch. It was eerily similar to his reaction when I told him about my own business trip. The night before his departure, Harrison had to run out to the convenience store after realizing he forgot to buy something. I took this as the perfect opportunity to check his suitcase, heading to the bedroom. Luckily, the suitcase was left open and easily accessible. Looking for evidence, I peered inside the suitcase, and its contents were suspicious at first glance. Is this really preparation for a business trip? A travel guidebook was hidden intentionally, and on top of it were notes with reservations times for popular restaurants in new, stylish clothes that didn't seem work-related. It looked like plans for a trip with someone. The next moment, I was shocked. Could it really be? The next day, Harrison left the house early in the morning. He wasn't wearing the stylish clothes I saw the day before, but his usual suit. After confirming the door was closed, I immediately tried to contact my parents' home. But no matter how long I waited, there was no answer. Anxiously, I headed to my workplace. Then, an unexpected development awaited me. In the morning, I was at a loss for words when I received a sudden call from the hospital. Hello, this is Westside Hospital. May I speak to Mrs. Harrison Smith? Yes, that's me. What happened? We will explain the details when you arrive. Your husband has been injured and we ask that you come as soon as possible. I learned that Harrison had slipped and fractured his leg while at a spa resort and was urgently transported to a nearby hospital. Thankfully, his life was not in danger. I immediately informed my boss of the situation and rushed to the hospital. On the way, I also contacted Harrison's company. Normally, if he was on a business trip, the company would have been informed of his whereabouts. I'm really sorry to trouble you, but this is Harrison Smith's wife, Sally Smith. I heard my husband was hospitalized during his business trip. When I said this, I was met with a surprising statement from my husband's boss who answered the phone. What do you mean Harrison has been hospitalized during his business trip? We only have a report that he took a long vacation, and I heard he was traveling with his wife. That was the response I got. This confused me, but I quickly understood the situation and it became clear that Harrison had lied about going on a business trip and had actually gone on a vacation. Moreover, he had told his company that he was traveling with me and had taken leave for it. Hearing this, my anger towards Harrison surged, but at the same time, the fact that he was suffering from a fracture complicated my feelings as I rushed to the hospital. The hospital was located about 2 hours from the city center in a resort area. Upon arrival, I completed the check-in process and headed to Harrison's hospital room. As expected, my sister Kate was there, taking care of Harrison. He himself had fractured his right leg and was in a pitiful state with a large bandage wrapped around it. He mumbled pitifully, I'm so sorry it had to come to this. But in my mind, anger won out over sympathy for him.
Hey, why are you just hanging around there? Show a little concern, will you? Wipe off my sweat too. You're my wife, after all. I no longer feel any obligation to worry about you. No matter how tough it gets for you.
What do you mean?
I was just busy with work. And I got injured because I was too tired.
My husband tried to excuse himself, but his words no longer held any weight for me.
Just keep piling up the lies. Pretending to work when you were just out having fun. What did you say?
Harrison said, his face turning red, and he tried to move. But in the next moment, he lost his balance and fell from the bed. Then he screamed in pain. When the nurse rushed in to ask about the situation, I just coldly looked down at my betrayed husband.
You just fell on your own. You've lost the right to expect any marital duties from me since you cheated.
I coldly stated this and showed Harrison and Kate the photo I had been holding. Yes, on the day I told Harrison I was going on a business trip, I felt something off about Harrison's satisfied behavior and Kate's actions, so I hired a detective to monitor the two of them together over 3 days. As a result, I was able to obtain evidence of their infidelity. The photos provided clearly captured the moments of Harrison meeting up with Kate at a hotel. As soon as I revealed this truth in the hospital room, Kate was greatly shaken. She desperately denied it, saying, "No, it's not me, the real person isn't me," while opening the curtain to the next bed. At that moment, I faced an unbelievable sight. Behind the curtain was my mother. And she was more severely injured than Harrison. Faced with this situation, my mind was in turmoil.
Wait, why is Mom here?
Then Kate began to speak calmly. Listen to the truth. Harrison's affair wasn't with me. It was actually with Mom. This shocking revelation left me frozen. It was true that my mother and Harrison had been traveling together, and an accident in a mixed-gender bath led them both to be rushed to the hospital. Kate continued to explain how much our mother had been struggling since our father's death, how envious she had been of my relationship with my husband, and that she had been in contact with Harrison behind my back. I don't want to hear any excuses anymore. To my mother, who apologized with a sorry, that's all I could say. This whole situation is beyond abnormal. And you knew everything from the start, I said, feeling disappointed in Kate. The reality that my mother and my sister's husband were involved was hard to accept. Why did you keep silent about it? To my question, Kate sighed. Ever since Harrison and Mom started their affair, I've been desperately trying to fix things without you knowing. Then, Mom asked me to pretend to be the affair partner in case things got exposed. I couldn't say no. Hearing this made me angry. Did you even consider me for a moment during all this? Kate answered quietly. It was a tough time for me too. I wanted to do something about Mom's loneliness. And I felt she became happier since Harrison started coming around. I was speechless. My own family was this selfish and morally corrupt. And there's this evidence too, Kate said as she pulled out an IC recorder. She had recorded conversations between Harrison and my mother, just in case, to prove her own innocence. When she pressed play, Harrison and my mother's voices were clearly recorded. Their conversation, and their laughter talking about me, was audible. At that moment, Harrison suddenly exclaimed,
"No! That woman came on to me. I tried to reject her, but she kept coming after me every time."
I stared at Harrison calmly. Do you really think that? Then why are you talking so happily here? And to Harrison's words, my mother retorted indignantly.
You're the one who said you were drawn to the allure of an older woman and approached me. Stop lying. Just because you're a bit younger doesn't mean you can be so delusional.
Both parties were blaming each other, but who seduced whom first is no longer important. I don't want to be involved in this anymore. I still have work to clean up. Sally, you have your sister, after all. Kate said, trying to leave, but I stopped her. Wait, you're not innocent in this. You're a perpetrator too. What? How can you say that? Sure, my mother and Harrison's betrayal is unforgivable. But Kate, knowing the truth and cooperating with the deception, is just as responsible. I plan to demand compensation from all of them and never let them forget the pain of betrayal. A few days later, I hired a lawyer to proceed with the divorce from Harrison. I was also successful in obtaining a significant settlement from him and my mother. It was later revealed that the reason for Kate's divorce was her own infidelity. So, it makes sense why she could act this way. And Kate is still trying to reconcile with her ex-husband, but has been firmly rejected. As for Harrison, after being discharged, he returned to work, but the atmosphere was quite uncomfortable for him. His bad reputation spread throughout the company, and he was eventually transferred to a regional branch, where he is isolated. Meanwhile, my mother has been forced into a wheelchair life due to the accident and is spending her days in bitterness being cared for by Harrison. This self-inflicted situation couldn't be more fitting for them. I've completely cut ties with them and decided never to associate with them again. For now, I plan to enjoy my single life and focus on my work instead of love.